an opportunity. An opportunity if it comes at any time. Big wealth comes out after a major crisis. You need to buy dollars.
Yes, I'll buy it.
Yes, you should buy when it's cheap.
Hello, meet you. This is Dr. Kim from Richgo.
Hello, this is Kim Richgo.
We're currently filming and talking about some pretty gloomy stuff. The economy is tough. It's a crisis. If the economic situation keeps getting worse, then how should we manage our finances? And when should we invest? I want to talk about that.
Sounds good. And before we get into what we've seen, I want to ask, is an opportunity really an opportunity if it comes at any time?
No, it's not.
No. Do you really know when a big opportunity that can change your life will come? And do you know when the people who make really big money seize that opportunity? Big wealth comes out after a major crisis. And do you know when the people who make really big money seize that opportunity? After a great crisis, great is emerged. A crisis is approaching. So, I believe that in 4 to 5 years, a big, wealthy person will emerge in South Korea. The wealthy people we didn't know about. During the IMF crisis, Chairman Park Hyun-joo really took advantage of the situation to build an enormous company. And even after the financial crisis, I saw a lot of people making money from real estate auctions back then. So while a crisis is definitely approaching, I really hope to seize the huge opportunities that will come after it. So I think how we manage our assets over the next 1, 2, 3 years is really, really important. If you've been following my videos for a long time, you know that I've been talking about the dollar consistently since 2020 and into 2021. So what is the dollar? You absolutely need to have a diversified asset portfolio, just like insurance. I've talked about this on YouTube and mentioned it several times on my blog. So when I talked about the dollar, it was right around this time. At that time, it was still under 1200 won. But how much is it now? It's close, 1400 won. I talked about the dollar back then too. You really need to hold on to the dollar like insurance in this day and age. Absolutely. If I don't have any dollar assets in my portfolio right now, whether it's stocks or anything else, I think not having dollar assets is really risky. And now, what are the shining assets in the era of crisis for the Korean economy? This is different. So take a look. At this time, the IMF, then, although it's a bit small, you have the dot-com bubble at this time. Then was the interest rate crisis at that time. Then, recently there was the interest rate hike, and now there's more to come. So, what happened to real estate during the IMF? It plummeted from 50% to 80%. Commercial real estate plummeted by 70% to 80%. Residential real estate also plummeted by about 50%. So, while most of the balances are crashing, what happens to the exchange rate? It skyrocketed. Look at this time too. What happened to stocks and real estate during the financial crisis? Everything crashed, right? But what went up? Only the $1 exchange rate went up. Looking at various indicators and the current situation, even if it's not a crisis, there's a high possibility that the $1 exchange rate will continue to rise in the future. Right now, there are a lot of concerns about the South Korean economy. What that means? It means that the value of the Korean won is decreasing. Right now, we're seeing the longest decline in ownership sales for 10 consecutive quarters. We're seeing the longest period of continuous decline in ownership sales. And now we have the highest number of corporate bankruptcies ever. I don't understand why. There's so many record highs.
Exactly.
We have the highest number of legal bankruptcies ever, the highest number of self-employed bankruptcies, and while it's not a record high, we have the largest number of auctions in 20 years. Plus, there are rumors of restructuring crises for big companies. We're hearing ongoing stories about crises at companies like Samsung and Lotte. And what's the final blow there? Trump said he would prioritize his own country. I will only take care of the US. What is this? In the end, strength of the dollar is inevitable.
The dollar. Hovering around 1400, it's becoming entrenched. So, in your opinion, you said we should include the dollar in our investment portfolio. What price level should we do that?
Don't think too much about it. Just keep buying every month until the first quarter of next year. Keep buying. Honestly, it should have been there a long time ago, but do I still not have any dollars in my portfolio or my pocket? Buy it now. It's really dangerous. Not having dollars is really dangerous. You need to buy dollars. Yes, I'll buy it. You need to buy when it's cheap. Buy dollars even if you have to go into debt. I think there are two scenarios we might face in the future. The US prioritizes itself, so the US economy can grow on its own. And then there are talks about the US facing a Great Depression, right? They're saying that the US is also in a lot of danger right now. Let's look at two cases. The US economy is growing, so will the dollar strengthen or weaken? Of course it will strengthen. Then the exchange rate will go up. Now let's consider the opposite scenario, where the US economy falls into a recession. At that time, how is the dollar supposed to behave? It should drop. But what happens then? What happens to other countries if the US falls into a recession? It leads to a deeper recession. Back then, I really didn't understand much because my knowledge was limited during the interest rate period. The thing is, our economy wasn't that bad at that time. But the subprime mortgage crisis happened in the US, and the US real estate bubble burst. So if you think about it that way, it should be a crisis for the US. And since there's no crisis in Korea, the exchange rate should go down. But instead, the exchange rate has actually gone up. So, because the US is the reserve currency, these things happen. When a crisis occurs, the exchange rate skyrockets. In other words, when a crisis hits, the exchange rate can rise even more. Why is that? Since other countries are struggling more, whether the US economy gets better or worse, what happens to the exchange rate?
It goes up.
There's a very high possibility that it will go up. And please don't overreact every single day. Don't overreact every single day. Just buy it and hold on to it steadily. This isn't just about me trying to make money. It's the only asset that can protect the rest of my wealth in case a serious economic disaster hits. So if everything else is dropping, but this one goes up, does that protect my entire wealth? Is that okay? It became a heavy rain. But I thought stocks and real estate would keep getting better, so I don't have any dollars. But what if something bad happens? Then what do I do? I'm just going to lose my wealth, right? That's why I really think it would be great if you could at least get some dollars for hedging purposes. And this is what I mentioned in the short term. But let me also share my thoughts on the mid to long term. In the mid to long term, I believe that for the sake of the South Korean economy, South Koreans should invest in dollar assets. We need to keep investing in dollar assets for the next 5 to 10 years. In the mid to long term, this is what I'm talking about. Because what determines the value of real estate or the currency of a specific country? Which real estate is going up? Which real estate is unpopular and which one is going up? Is there real estate in the mountain valley in Gangwon-do? Are there a lot of people going there? Isn't there a lot? Not. The value of real estate is determined by how much I want that property and how often people use it. Is land in a mountain valley in Gangwon-do cheap or not? It's cheap, right? Why is it cheap? People aren't really interested, so they don't. Oh, why is Gangnam so expensive? Everyone wants to go there and wants to be there. What does that mean? The value of real estate is determined by how much people want to go to or own that property. So what about the value of a specific country's currency? It's the same. The value of money is determined by how many people are using it. So if there are currently 100 million people using dollars and that number drops to 50 million in the future, the number of people using dollars will decrease, right? Will the value of that money go up? Will it drop? If it decreases, chances are high that it will drop. But there are a lot of people using that money. Then the chances are high that it will keep going up. So it's about how many people are using it. In the end, this is what determines the value of real estate or the currency of a specific country. Do you understand? So let me ask you a question. Will there be more people using Korean money in the future? Will it decrease?
It will decrease significantly. There will be a population decline, but currency isn't used worldwide.
That's right. It's going to decrease. The population structure is the most important thing. If you look at the population, peaked around 2022, and then it starts to decline in 2020 and 2021. From 2022 to 2040, the rate of decline isn't that significant. But what happens after that? It decreases very rapidly. But what happens after that? It decreases very rapidly. And if you look at this, population growth rate has also turned negative, right, in 2022. And in 2024, the negative will get bigger. And by 2072, the negative gap will widen even more. This is also a very positive scenario right now. So what does that mean? When we look at the value of the Korean won compared to the US dollar over the next 10, 20 or 30 years, Will it go up? Will it go down?
It can't help but go down.
It can't help go down. It can only go down. And now we're at the beginning of that. Why? Korea is at the beginning of a shrinking population. Factories are built overseas, influenced by US actions. So Korea's competitiveness is diminishing even more. In my view, this is definitely influenced by the semi-threats and benefits from the US. But now Trump is also making his presence felt. So these things must be really putting big companies in a tough spot. They should just build factories in Korea. So these things must be really putting big companies in a tough spot. They should just build factories in Korea. We really need to build factories in Korea. So that's what I think. In the next 20 or 30 years, what will the $1 to dollar exchange rate be? When we imagine people talking about exchange rates like 1601, 1701, or even 2001, we think, wow, Korea must be in a crisis. What do you think the exchange rate will be in 20 or 30 years? How many thousand won do you think it will be? Don't you think it will be above 2001?
I think it could even go higher.
I don't think it's impossible for it to reach 5,001 or even 1,001. That's what I think. So, what does that mean? We still have to live in South Korea, right? So, to prepare for the future and retirement, we need to accumulate dollar assets every month. So, I'm not saying you should buy US stocks, but you definitely need to start accumulating dollars. So, I think I should buy a certain portion of my salary in dollars every month. Don't even think about going all in to buy an apartment. Instead of that, just save dollars steadily every month. I think that's a much better investment for the future.
Anyway, it's not like the money just disappearing, so I get it. Today we talked about how to manage your finances in this crisis, and I'll summarize and wrap it up.
I think everyone is aware that Korea is in a dangerous situation now. That's why we need to have a safety net during times like this. That insurance is the dollar. And whether the US economy is doing well or bad, the dollar. I want to emphasize that there's a high possibility that it will continue to rise. So, in the short term, let's increase our dollar asset allocation within the first quarter of next year. And looking at the medium to long term, over the next 10, 20, or even 30 years, we need to keep accumulating a certain amount of dollar assets regularly. That's really important for me to say.
Before I finish, something just popped into my head. I saw in the news that dollar insurance is super popular right now. And maybe that's why, I guess, is all related, right? That makes sense. Got it. So today, the conclusion is that in this crisis era, we need to figure out how to manage our assets. And the answer is to accumulate dollars. I'll wrap up today's video here. Thank you.